In the records of Queen Alexandra's jewels, some entries simply stop. No explanation, no public appearance, no trace. Over time, entire tiaras, necklaces, and brooches slipped out of sight. A wedding gift from a future king, a diamond necklace worn at Parliament, jewels that defined an era and then quietly disappeared. Were they sold, dismantled, passed down in silence? In this video, we are following those missing pieces and the decisions that changed the fate of one of the most extraordinary royal collections in history. Before we begin, please support my channel by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons. Thank you. Queen Alexandra was the undisputed fashion icon of her time. She understood the power of visual impact better than perhaps anyone else. While she often wore little jewelry in her daily life, for state occasions she transformed completely, appearing in fabulous displays of glittering gems that cascaded from her neck to her waist. She treated her collection not just as accessories, but as an essential part of her royal armor. When she passed away in November 1925, she left behind a legacy of unparalleled elegance, but she did not leave a traditional will. Instead, she left a vast, cluttered collection of objects and a specific photographic inventory with handwritten notes expressing her wishes. On a mild Saturday morning in January 1926, 7 weeks after her death, the family gathered at Sandringham to settle her affairs. King George V and Queen Mary walked over from York Cottage to the main house, joining two of Alexandra's daughters, Princess Victoria and Queen Maud of Norway. Queen Mary, who preferred order, noted the bewildering lot of things in the house, describing the task of dividing Mother Dear's jewels as interesting but sad. Using Alexandra's photographic inventory as their guide, they distributed the treasures. A significant portion remains in the British royal family today, worn by Queen Camilla and the Princess of Wales. Another large share traveled across the North Sea with Queen Maud and is still worn by the Norwegian royal family. But there were other pieces, magnificent, historic, and deeply personal, that took a more complex and shadowy path. Today, we are going to focus on those, the treasures that were sold, dismantled, or simply vanished into history. There is one important point we must keep in mind before we begin. We do not have a complete, publicly accessible inventory of every jewel Queen Alexandra owned. We know about many pieces through photographs, press descriptions, and family records, which means that surprises are still possible. We saw a stunning example of this just recently in March 2024. At the Commonwealth Day service at Westminster Abbey, Queen Camilla appeared wearing a piece no one had seen in public for over a century. It was an intricate jewel featuring a massive cut aquamarine set within a diamond heart, with a second heart-shaped aquamarine suspended from a chain. Thanks to the research of historian Trond Noren Isaacson, who was granted access to Alexandra's inventory, we now know this was one of her possessions, likely a Fabergé creation from around 1904. It had passed from Alexandra to Queen Mary, and then to Queen Elizabeth II, sleeping quietly in the dark for decades until it emerged in the sunlight on Queen Camilla. It is a comforting thought. If this spectacular brooch could hide in plain sight for 100 years, what other lost treasures might simply be waiting for their moment to shine again? Princess Victoria, Alexandra's second daughter, was perhaps the most private member of the royal family. Known to her mother and sisters as Toria, she never married and spent her entire life as a devoted companion to her mother. When Queen Alexandra died, Toria inherited a portion of her personal jewelry collection alongside her sisters, the Princess Royal and Queen Maud of Norway. We don't have a complete list of exactly what Toria received, but thanks to Queen Mary's notes in the family inventory, we know that several highly significant pieces, jewels that defined Alexandra's public image, passed into her hands. When Toria herself died 10 years later in 1935, the trail for these specific heirlooms went cold. Next to the entries for these pieces in the royal records, Queen Mary wrote a brief final phrase: disposed of. It is a frustratingly vague term. Did it mean they were sold, broken up, given away? Today, Realizing that we know nothing about the fate or location of such historic treasures is deeply disheartening. Let's look at some of the major pieces that vanished into Toria's collection. The most significant and perhaps most painful loss in this group is Queen Alexandra's wedding gift tiara. When the young Princess Alexandra of Denmark arrived in England in 1863 to marry the future King Edward VII, he presented her with a lavish parure made by Gerard. It included a necklace, brooch, and earrings of pearls and diamonds, which luckily remain in the royal family today. After Alexandra's passing, Queen Mary inherited the necklace, the brooch, and the earrings. She later presented the necklace to her daughter-in-law, Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, who made it a lifelong favorite. And more recently, the current Princess of Wales, Catherine, has worn it with great elegance. The brooch and earrings eventually passed to Queen Elizabeth II, who wore them frequently throughout her long reign. But the diamond tiara that completed this parure took a very different path. Designed with Greek motifs and scroll ornaments, it was a versatile piece that Alexandra wore frequently in her early years as Princess of Wales. For the wedding of her youngest daughter Maud in 1896, she actually modified it, removing the top layer of diamond scrolls and Celtic knots to make the tiara lighter and more open. 2 years later, the Princess of Wales was photographed wearing the tiara in its complete form before attending a court drawing room. This appears to be the final recorded image of the piece, as in the years that followed, Queen Alexandra chose to favor other royal heirlooms instead. After Alexandra's death in 1925, the historic tiara went to Princess Victoria. And then, silence. It has never been seen on a member of the British royal family since. You might stumble across photos online claiming that this tiara was found in Malaysia, worn by the former Queen of Kelantan. I have to disappoint you. That is a modern myth. The tiara in Malaysia is a copy, likely made in the 1980s, inspired by Alexandra's design, but created with modern materials like white and yellow gold. The original 1863 masterpiece by Gerard remains lost, likely dismantled or sold by Princess Victoria in the decade following her mother's death. In many photographs of Queen Alexandra, you can spot a particularly grand diamond necklace that seems to define her opulent style. But if you try to find its origin story, you will hit a wall. The truth is, we don't know exactly where it came from, or even what it looked like originally. That is because Alexandra was famous for her inventive, almost theatrical approach to jewelry. She treated her collection like a construction kit, and this necklace was a composite creation, a brilliant puzzle made of several separate jewels put together by her own hand. If you look closely at the photos, you can see that the central element is actually a large, lozenge-shaped diamond brooch. Suspended from that is often another oblong diamond motif. Her most daring experiment with this set happened at the State Opening of Parliament in 1901. Enthusiasts analyzing the photographs from that day noticed something extraordinary. Alexandra took it and draped it down the front of her skirt, pinning the brooches to the fabric so they glittered with every step she took. We know from the archives that this necklace was inherited by Princess Victoria. And once again, Queen Mary's note confirms it was disposed of. But here is where the story offers a glimmer of hope. Alexandra frequently attached a specific pair of diamond pendant earrings to this necklace, and sometimes to her pearl wedding necklace. They too were left to Princess Victoria and marked as disposed of in 1946. But they didn't vanish. Those specific earrings found their way to the Norwegian royal family, perhaps purchased by Queen Maud or King Olav from Toria. Today, they are worn by Queen Sonja of Norway. If the disposed of earrings are safe and sound in Oslo, is it possible that the magnificent necklace and the lozenge brooches didn't disappear either? Perhaps they are just sleeping in a vault, unrecognized, waiting for someone to put the puzzle pieces back together. Finally, there is the mystery of the diamond stars. Starting in the year they married and continuing over the following decades, King Edward VII gradually gave Queen Alexandra a series of diamond star brooches as gifts. In September 1864, Gerard altered 5 stars for the prince, and 2 months later, diamonds from a dismantled tiara were used to create three-star hairpins. The largest addition came in 1873, when the Prince of Wales took a highly practical approach to royal gifting. He had a diamond-set Indian shield dismantled, and Gerard used those recovered stones to create 6 new diamond stars. These were large, impressive objects. While small, flat star brooches were common in the Victorian era, Alexandra's stars were highly dimensional, featuring ray tips that sloped downward steeply from the center. Alexandra adored them. She pinned these brilliant, radiating stars across her bodice, or mounted them onto the diamond base of her wedding tiara. Her husband even commissioned a special diamond bandeau in 1866, costing £500, designed specifically to hold 9 of these star ornaments together as a separate diadem. While the starry tiara was undeniably imposing, I personally prefer the way she styled them off the frame. Yet, following her death in 1925, these signature pieces vanished from public view. Their exact fate remains a complete mystery. Because of Alexandra's well-known habit of modifying jewels, they might have been dismantled and repurposed into new creations for later generations. Historians also strongly suspect they were part of the undocumented collection left to Princess Victoria. Of course, there is always the lingering hope that they were never sold or broken up and are simply resting in the royal vaults, waiting to be rediscovered. I find it a great pity that such a beautiful and era-defining design is entirely missing from the royal family's current collection. When Princess Alexandra of Denmark arrived in Britain, she brought with her a fresh Scandinavian beauty, but a rather modest jewelry collection. Queen Victoria, however, was determined to outfit her new daughter-in-law appropriately. Among the many wedding gifts she presented in 1863 was a suite of Indian jewelry that stood out for its sheer, uncompromising exoticism. This wasn't the polite, symmetrical jewelry of European courts. It was described at the time as barbaric gold, set with uncut emeralds and flat, unfaceted diamonds known as lasks. The centerpiece was a massive 7-row collar of pearls and emerald beads, hung with a multitude of pearl drops and diamond pendants. It was heavy, magnificent, and distinctly Oriental in style. Alexandra, who had a flair for the dramatic, wore it with great effect, most famously at the Devonshire House Ball in 1897, where its raw splendor perfectly matched her costume. After Alexandra's death, this formidable Indian collar passed to Queen Mary. Mary had a well-known habit of reworking jewelry to suit more modern tastes, and the official story, championed by royal jewelry historian Leslie Field, is that she dismantled this piece entirely. According to this version, the pearls and emeralds were reused to create a new wedding gift for her daughter-in-law, Princess Alice, Duchess of Gloucester, in 1935. There is compelling evidence for this theory. In 1931, a very young Princess Elizabeth, our late queen, was photographed wearing a small diamond pendant on a thin chain. Eagle-eyed enthusiasts have pointed out that this pendant looks remarkably like one of the drops from Alexandra's original Indian collar. It suggests the piece was indeed broken up and its parts distributed among the family. But if you look closely at the photos, a mystery arises that haunts some researchers. The pearl and emerald suite given to the Duchess of Gloucester features large, lustrous gems. Some experts argue that the pearls in the Gloucester necklace appear significantly larger than the ones seen in photos of Alexandra's original Indian collar. Could it be that the two pieces are not as directly connected as the official history suggests? My personal view is that Alexandra's necklace was almost certainly dismantled. It was simply too heavy and specific to remain wearable in the 1930s. It's quite possible that the emeralds, and perhaps the largest pearls, were indeed used for the Gloucester suite, while the hundreds of smaller pearls were repurposed elsewhere in the vast royal collection. But the discrepancy in size is a fascinating detail. It reminds us that royal provenance is often a mix of documented fact and educated guesswork. There is another Indian-style mystery in Alexandra's collection that involves pearls, but of a very different kind. Alexandra was famous for wearing ropes of pearls that cascaded from her neck down to her waist, sometimes even to her knees. One particular necklace, a massive sautoir with pearl tassels, appears in many of her most regal portraits, including a famous 1902 photograph by Alice Hughes. It looks incredibly opulent, the kind of jewel that speaks of limitless wealth, featuring multiple strands spaced by diamond bars and a centerpiece of 3 large cabochon gems, almost certainly emeralds. The origin of this spectacular piece likely dates back to 1876, when King Edward VII, then Prince of Wales, returned from an 8-month tour of India. He brought back over 2,000 gifts, including what the press described as a magnificent pearl necklace with a massive jewel of diamonds, pearls, and emeralds. The description matches Alexandra's necklace perfectly. There is a famous, slightly chaotic story associated with Alexandra's pearls. Sir Lionel Cust, a courtier of the time, recalled an incident at the state opening of Parliament where the Queen's long pearl necklace caught on the woodwork of the state coach. The string snapped, scattering pearls onto the pavement and around the horse's feet. The entire royal procession was halted while pages and footmen groveled on the ground to recover every single gem. Interestingly, later accounts suggested a twist to this story. Sir Michael Duff claimed that his grandmother, the Marchioness of Ripon, used to bring Alexandra high-quality false jewelry from Paris, and that the pearls broken that day were actually paste. It paints a picture of a queen who valued the theatrical effect of jewelry over its intrinsic worth. However, we must be careful not to conflate stories. Historian Trond Noren Isaksen, who recently examined Alexandra's inventory, confirms that the specific, massive Indian sautoir seen in her official portraits was undeniably real. It is listed across 5 pages of Indian jewelry in her personal album. Sadly, its authenticity did not save it. The inventory reveals that this piece, too, was inherited by Princess Victoria. And once again, Queen Mary's handwriting delivers the final verdict next to the entry: disposed of. I find it deeply regrettable that such a significant piece of the collection is gone. Of course, it is hard to imagine a modern royal woman wearing knee-length pearl tassels today. It belongs so completely to the Edwardian silhouette. But if it had been preserved, imagine seeing it in an exhibition at Buckingham Palace. We could have finally seen the green of those emeralds and the luster of the pearls, bringing those black and white photographs to life. Instead, we can only look at the portraits and acknowledge that this splendor is lost forever. Until now, we have been speaking about jewels that faded quietly into obscurity. But some pieces did not disappear silently. They were openly sold. This is the story of how gifts from emperors and grand lodges were sold off, piece by piece, to the highest bidder. One of Alexandra's most personal and versatile sets revolved around a gemstone that isn't often associated with major royal tiaras: the humble amethyst. For her silver wedding anniversary in 1888, she received a parure of deep purple amethysts, a tiara, a necklace, and likely other ornaments, from her brother-in-law, Tsar Alexander III of Russia. Alexandra clearly had a fondness for the stone, but she was also a woman who loved variety and wasn't afraid to take her jewelry apart to get it. At the same time as the amethyst gift, the Tsar and his wife, Alexandra's sister Empress Maria Fyodorovna, presented her with a magnificent sapphire and diamond collar. It was composed of 8 large sugarloaf cabochon sapphires, each surrounded by diamonds and held together by twisted diamond bar panels. Here is where Alexandra's creative streak shines through. The amethyst tiara was designed with a clever mechanism that allowed the central stones to be swapped out. For the wedding of her eldest daughter, Princess Louise, in 1889, Alexandra removed the original amethysts from the tiara and replaced them with the sugarloaf sapphires from her new Russian collar. We actually have very few photographs of Alexandra wearing this tiara in any form. The most famous images show her at Louise's wedding, wearing the sapphire version. After Alexandra's death in 1925, both the amethyst tiara, with its original stones, and the sapphire collar passed to her daughter, Princess Louise, the Princess Royal. Louise, in turn, left them to her younger daughter, Princess Maud, later the Countess of Southesk. Maud wore the tiara in its amethyst setting for the coronation of her cousin, King George VI, in 1937. It's one of the few times we know the piece appeared in its original form. But the story takes a sharp turn after Princess Maud died in 1945. Her son and heir, the future 3rd Duke of Fife, was still a minor. The trustees of his estate sent his grandmother's historic jewels to auction. In 1946, a sale was held where the pieces were scattered to the winds. The amethyst tiara sold for £1,750. The matching amethyst necklace went for £580, and the magnificent sapphire collar, the gift of a czar, fetched £4,900 from a London dealer. For decades, these pieces disappeared into private collections. Then, in 1986, the sapphire collar unexpectedly resurfaced at a Christie's auction in New York. It was a rare chance to see a piece of Alexandra's history in color, but it also highlighted just how far these treasures had traveled from the royal vaults. Today, the location of all three pieces, the tiara, the amethyst necklace, and the sapphire collar, is unknown. It is difficult not to feel a sense of loss that gifts of such immense historical and sentimental value, symbols of the close ties between the British and Russian courts, were so easily dissolved into the open market. The auction block claimed another of Alexandra's most exquisite jewels, one that was a marvel of Victorian engineering. For that same silver wedding in 1888, the Grand Lodge of Freemasons of England presented her with a spectacular diamond butterfly brooch. It was a large, impressive piece, measuring nearly 10 centimeters across. The wings were pavé set with diamonds that tapered in size to create a delicate, shimmering effect, and the eyes were set with rubies, the only touch of color in an otherwise pure white jewel. But the real magic was in the construction. The wings were mounted en tremblant, meaning they were set on tiny springs. With every breath Alexandra took, the butterfly's wings would gently tremble, catching the light and making the insect appear almost alive. Alexandra wore this brooch often, pinning it to her shoulder or bodice for court events and family weddings. It was a favorite. Eventually, it passed to her granddaughter, Princess Mary, the Countess of Harewood. For a long time, it remained safe in the Harewood family collection. However, history repeated itself. In 2010, the descendants of Princess Mary decided to sell. The brooch appeared at a strictly vetted art fair in Maastricht, offered by a London jeweler on behalf of the family. It was later listed by Sotheby's. When Princess Alexandra arrived in England in 1863, the ladies of Liverpool presented her with a breathtaking diamond cross pendant. The press at the time reported it was set with 11 large English-cut Golconda diamonds of the purest water. Golconda diamonds are legendary for their transparency and brilliance, the same type of stones found in the crown jewels. These 11 gems were cut with mathematical precision to maximize their fire, unlike the older cuts common at the time. The cross hung from a single row of pearls and came in a pale blue velvet case with a gold plate bearing Alexandra's initial surmounted by a crown. Alexandra loved it. It was a masterpiece of craftsmanship and a symbol of the affection of an entire city. But after her death in 1925, the trail goes cold. Where is the Liverpool diamond cross today? Royal jewelry detectives have spent decades trying to track it down, and three main theories have emerged. Theory number one is the Norwegian connection. Alexandra's youngest daughter, Queen Maud of Norway, inherited a significant portion of her mother's jewelry. It is entirely possible the cross traveled across the North Sea. In fact, a tantalizing photograph from 1950 shows Queen Maud's daughter-in-law, Crown Princess Martha, wearing a diamond cross that bears a striking resemblance to Alexandra's. In the same photo, Martha is wearing other pieces known to be Alexandra's, a brooch and earrings. It seems like a slam-dunk case. But hold on, theory number two keeps the cross closer to home. The current Duchess of Gloucester, Brigitte, has been photographed wearing a diamond cross pendant that also looks remarkably similar to the descriptions of the Liverpool gift. It has the same arrangement of 11 stones. Could it be that the cross never left the British royal family at all, but was simply passed down to a different branch, perhaps through Queen Mary to her son Henry, the Duke of Gloucester? And then there is the third, most disheartening theory. The cross left the royal family entirely. Perhaps it was sold quietly by a descendant, or maybe the piece worn by Crown Princess Martha or the Duchess of Gloucester is actually a copy or a different heirloom altogether. Without a clear paper trail or a modern high-resolution photograph to compare the unique cutting of those Golconda diamonds, we are left guessing. This brings us to a major problem in identifying royal jewels: the sheer volume of similar pieces. Royal jewelers like Gerard often made multiple versions of popular designs for different family members. A diamond cross is a classic motif. It is entirely possible that Alexandra, Maud, and the Gloucesters all owned different diamond crosses that just happened to look alike in grainy black and white photos. Finally, we come to a piece that was deeply personal to Alexandra. In the Victorian era, snake jewelry was incredibly popular, symbolizing eternal love and wisdom. Queen Victoria herself had a snake engagement ring. Alexandra embraced this trend wholeheartedly. Alexandra wore this bracelet for decades. You can see it in portraits from her early years as Princess of Wales, right through to her time as Queen. In one touching photograph, Alexandra is shown with her mother, Queen Louise of Denmark. Both women are wearing snake bracelets. Yet, despite its sentimental value and the frequency with which she wore it, the snake bracelet has vanished. It wasn't in the auctions, it hasn't appeared on any modern royal wrists, and there are no notes about it being disposed of. If the stories of lost jewels leave you feeling a little melancholy, let me offer you a final glimmer of hope. Because sometimes jewels don't disappear forever. Sometimes they just go to sleep. In 1904, Queen Alexandra commissioned a piece from Cartier that was the height of Edwardian fashion. It was a collier razzile, a fishnet necklace. Imagine a wide, flexible mesh of diamonds that hug the neck like a glittering fabric collar. Alexandra, always dramatic, originally had it set with detachable ruby and emerald drops, gifts from Indian Maharajas. After Alexandra's death, this stunning choker passed to Queen Mary, and, true to form, Mary made changes. She replaced the colorful drops with diamonds, and not just any diamonds. She used stones cut from the legendary Cullinan diamond. Queen Mary was photographed wearing this altered, all-diamond version for her 80th birthday in 1947, looking every inch the formidable matriarch. Then, in 1953, the necklace was inherited by her granddaughter, Queen Elizabeth II. And here's the fascinating part. In her entire 70-year reign, Queen Elizabeth never wore it in public. For decades, jewelry historians wondered if it had been dismantled, sold, or disposed of like so many other treasures. But it hadn't. In 2012, Sir Hugh Roberts published The Queen's Diamonds, the definitive book on the royal collection. And there, listed quietly among the inventory, was Queen Alexandra's Cartier Collier Razzile. It still exists. It is sitting in a vault right now, perfectly preserved, waiting for a queen with the neck and the confidence to wear it. This brings us full circle. Just like the aquamarine heart brooch that Queen Camilla wore in 2024 after a century of invisibility, the Cartier fishnet collar proves that the royal vaults are deep and patient. It proves that absence from public view is not the same as disappearance. Queen Alexandra's legacy isn't just in the pieces we see today. It is in the mystery of what remains hidden. Her collection reflects her spirit. Bold, generous, a little chaotic, and undeniably magnificent. If you would like to explore more of these royal mysteries with me, I would be glad to continue this conversation in the next episode. I would love to share more of these hidden histories with you. Thank you so much for watching and for spending this time with me. After all, jewels may be silent, but their stories are not. And as long as we keep telling them, they will never truly be lost.